Hi, everybody. So last week I left off asking people to think about doing their homework and to think about what you craved as a child. You'll hear Anthony Robbins, say that so often. What did you crave as a child? I use it as what did you need the most as a child? What did you feel that you didn't have as a child? And why I ask that is because what occurs is that we will seek out the very thing that we're missing. But the oxymoron of that is that we fall in love. Let's say, so for me, let's say we were looking for support. So when you meet and you're in the magic, the excitement, and all that physical attraction, you think that that person is kind of supporting you and really supporting your dreams and really they're present for you. But what really happens in the stage of the romance is that you expand. You expand into like the essence of you. So you're actually giving that to yourself and you think it's that other person giving it to you, but it's actually you expanding and feeling, let's say, call it supported. And then what happens and why relationships break down so much is that we always want to try to recapture the part of the romance. But what occurs even in the part of the romance is that there'll be a red flag. And we don't address the red flag because we're kind of in, oh my God, this person is so there for me and they're supporting me and it's so great. Yeah, he drinks a bit, but it's okay. It's okay because it's not a lot. It's not, and he's not fall down and he's not doing this. So, what, it's okay. So we make something, the red flag, we give it excuses because we want the very thing that that person we think is giving us. The sad part about it, though, is that once we go into the actually crook of the relationship, when we start to live together or we get married, that same red flag comes up. And depending on how you sought love when you were a child, you'll either become a villain, a victim, or a rescuer. So for me, I'm a rescuer. So I would have said, when that is happening, that doesn't feel right, and so on. And I'd really like, for it to be different, or, can you try not to, or something like that. So I would be kind of being a villain rescuer because I would kind of put it down and then try to rescue it. And then what happens is if that person says, that's it, you were okay before, and now you're not okay with it, and I don't understand. And, why is it that you're making all of this wrong? So that person's like becomes a very big victim. So then you feel bad about yourself. So then you try to rescue it. And you just keep like on and on and on with what you're seeing on the board right now, right? Is the victim, the rescuer, and the projector. And what occurs is that you just keep going in that triad for years and years. You recycle the same issues, you become distant, you become unhappy. And that's where I'm going to call it the essence of you is fighting to be on the other side of the chart in the acceptance, happy, and wholeness of yourself. But most people, we don't know how to do that. We don't know how to do that. So we come out of a relationship or the relationship is breaking down. And a lot of people will just go and find another person. And you don't do work on yourself and you don't look at why did we get to this place or how do we get into this breakdown of this relationship rather than really work it and look at it and be committed. People just leave each other or they say, try for 3-4 years and that person's not changing. So at that point, yeah, Rebecca.
Can I just ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
Like when we go when you're the victim or the hero or the villain or whatever, like where does that come from? Like where do we learn how to behave in that manner?
That's a hard, so we learn that from childhood. So if let's say you identify with mom and you're running, let's say mom's blueprint, you may, and if let's say mom's as a victim, you may learn that how you get love is by being a victim, right? And then your whole being, and you're doing life through the lenses of being a victim of life. Let's call it that. But that was learned in childhood. That was learned between the age 0 to 8 years old. But the opposite applies as well. So if you have, let's say, I'm going to go, mom is more of a rescuer, and you may say, I'm never going to do this. So you become more of a villain because you're fighting against what you saw. And you think, I'm never going to be that. In turn, you still are going to be if you're running that parent's blueprint, but you're going to do it from the villain place. Does that explain it, Rebecca?
So you said that you were a villain.
Yeah.
And so
I'm a rescuer villain.
okay.
You probably be a rescuer victim, right? So if you're a rescuer victim, you're going to attract a villain, right? So we attract the one that we don't go to. So we have, I call it a mode of operation, is that I go directly to villain, or I'll go directly to rescue. And when rescue is not being appreciated, or I'm not seeming to be able to do it, then I go to villain, right? Because I meet victims. So I need them to stay as victims.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So like, let's go back here to like the first stage where there's like the romance and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
At that point of time, when we enter in a relationship, who are we?
We at that place, we're nothing. We are, well, actually, that's not true. That's not true. We go into our places where we feel the most comfortable. So let's say in the romance place, I would be the rescuer, right? And rescuing and feeling so good about it. And I can rescue him because he's listening to me and he's supporting me. So we have all this excuses and all this story in ourselves, right? Because that's all we know. And we're going to help him and he's going to help me and this is going to happen. And all of that is just an illusion, right? The romance, the attraction. When I teach the 12-week course that I do, I always say, if you're in that place, run. Because relationships should start from the bottom of accepting, happy, and whole, and in reveal and intimacy to, ensure that we're both on the same page and that, we can walk through some hardships together and stay on the creation part of the closeness, intimacy, accepting, and happy. Relationships should start there. And you should be, have a foot into you and really know who you are so that you're not excited by the charm and the infatuation of a person liking you. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So what I'd like to see people do is be in a place where you know yourself and you're in acceptance, you're happy and you're whole, and you are not seeking something from someone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, where's the place of like the romance and infatuation then? It comes
from the connection of the intimacy and the accepting, happy, and whole, but it goes that way up the chart rather than coming this way down the chart, right? Because if you're only in infatuation, it's a guarantee that you're going to meet someone who's just going to repeat the same story as you just broke up with, or that you had a separation or a divorce with. Because second relationships, and I keep repeating that, if you don't take a year, you don't take time to heal yourself and to really go back to who am I, right? Who am I? What am I? What makes me be accepting of me? What makes me happy within me? And I need to be whole, because I don't want to find a person who's not whole that I have to rescue and make them better, right? And so if I'm keep attracting people who are victims, is because I'm not whole within me, and I need a victim in order to rescue, in order to make me feel good, right? But the joke is that we meet that, and then a year, 2, 3 years down the road, we're sick of rescuing, and we become a villain because we're like, oh my God, get your act together, get your life together, because I don't want to rescue you anymore. So we're our own self-fulfilling prophecies here.
So when you left off last week and you started today, you talked about like what it is like I guess you're saying to find out what the relationship blueprint that we're playing is, to look at what we most needed as a kid. Is that right?
Absolutely. Okay. So if you look at, so can I use you as an example, Rebecca?
No, you just use yourself.
So what did you need the most as a child? Like, what do you feel you missed, you didn't get, you wanted?
Yeah, it was like, well, I think when I did your program, I don't know if I had the right word, but it was like acknowledgement and acceptance kind of thing.
Right. So what occurs is that you're looking everywhere in life to be accepted and acknowledged, right? So it's not only just in love relationship, it's mostly in love relationships. But until you become whole and accepting of self, you're not going to be able to meet someone who will be accepting and whole of you, because you're not accepting and whole of yourself, right? And so the person you're going to meet is also not going to be whole and accepting of himself, because you can't attract what you don't have. You can't give what you don't have, right? And so the bottom line is that's why so many relationships break down, is because we're seeking something from the other that we don't have, right? And we're thinking, and that's where in the infatuation piece is that we think in that place that they're actually giving that to us, but they're not. It's us giving it to us because we're in openness. Our heart is full. Because when you're in attraction, you're in the fullness of yourself, right? And so, for me, it's very, very important for people to understand also that you're passing this on to your kids, right? And how I got to come to that place to understand that is when my daughter brought her father home, right? Which is, a broken little boy who needed help, and he needed, her direction and her strength and all of that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe this. This is actually happening. And so I just came up with a theory on, we marry our parents. We marry a parent that was, we run somebody's blueprint. So we run a parent's blueprint, and then we marry the other parent. But what it is that if we can understand our blueprint, and we can understand what we run in relationships and heal some of those pieces, then you're healing pieces for your children as well, right? So my biggest quest in all of this is that we stop doing this to our children, because the more informed we are, and the more I'm not going to say guys, not like the more that we know about this, the more that we can heal our children as they are going into relationships.
Or maybe even before we have children.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, amazing lately is in this group, I have an 18-year-old and I have a 21-year-old. And it's really interesting. Like, they just walked in, paid their fee, sat down, and I was like, how did you get my name and how did you get here? Well, somebody was talking about something, and my relationships are really bad. I just come out of a 1-year, 2-year relationship, and I don't want to be like my parents. And so I decided I was going to come and learn this. And it's brilliant because, the adults in my group get to see what happens to these kids if we don't do our own work. And then the children, I call them children because they're 18, 20, and 21, they get to see the struggles of parents, right? And so for me, it's like, it's a gift when I get young people who are not married yet or don't have children and are really, working. What I'm trying to do with them is to bring them on the other side of the chart, which is the vitality, the closeness, the intimacy with themselves, and be accepting, happy, and whole, because then you make a whole different bunch of choices in friendships, in jobs, and mostly in love relationships. And it's a gift to be able to do it to younger people, or do it with younger people.
So when you're using the relationship blueprint as a tool to better understand how we operate,
yes,
is that,
for you
is that right?
to better understand. Yeah, I use the relationship blueprint for you to better understand that. And I go to couple. I had a couple this weekend, and I explained to them their blueprint, and they were just like, oh my God. They were so caught up in the anger that this one didn't make me feel like, so the husband didn't make her feel like she belonged, and the husband was not accepting. And so every time that he was not accepting of her, she felt she didn't belong. Because she didn't belong, then she would yell and scream at him. And then he would revert to moving away and hiding in the basement. And then they just kept doing this. And I call like the brick walls, right? There's one fight, there's two fights, look what he did. And it's all about their wounds not being met, right?
And so they had an aha moment when they
were just like, we cannot believe this. We cannot believe it. But they were able to see each other's pain, right? Because the minute you ask someone, what is it that you're not getting that you crave to get, you hit the 0 to 8-year-old child. And that they usually start crying in my office. Like that's a breakdown and a breakthrough and a big breakthrough, right? And so that's what I do. That's what I like to see people understand, to get out of blame and to get out of the bricks and to get out of a lot of those things in, if they're separated and divorced, into their new relationship, to really understand that you have the power to really be in command of yourself, right? And not blame and not make it about somebody else and, the big arguments and the bricks and the stories and, and then hence a breakdown. So to really understand relationships and the relationship you have with yourself, then you actually can help people love you. Because if you understand you, then you can say, you doing this doesn't make me feel like you love me. It's you're doing this because that's how you want to be loved. But for me, I need to be loved this way. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
It's really complicated. Like it's complex, right? So, we only have 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and I just want to give like 2 hours of it. So, I think the message today is really understanding that most people learn how to live, as victims. And I look like a victim is a person that withdraws. A rescuer is someone that withholds and says, how is everything? Oh, fine. So, the withdrawers of kind of victim-y. And then you put prospect, but it's the projector, which is a villain and just projects on people. And it's never about them, right? And really understand that that's a dynamic that also played in your childhood and that also played, in most everybody's background, because that's all we know, right? And we recycle the same issues, distance, unhappiness, of course. But, there are people who have done my group who have been married like 27 years, 40 years, and they'll come in and go, I cannot believe that I did that long. Wow. The sad part about it is for them, first 10, 15 years, they thought it was just normal. That's just the way we do relationships, right? Until you start to build that wall, and then there's breakdowns that are happening. So you can either choose to, come and do some work before it completely breaks down, or, you like I say, ask your partner before you leave. Hopefully there's not somebody else. Are you open to the possibilities that we can probably work this through if we came from an educated place, right? Mm-hmm. But too many people nowadays, like they get to this place and they usually go and meet somebody else, or they're leaving for someone else, and it's really sad, because if you leave a relationship and you're still playing that way, you're going to go back there. That's a guarantee. So you haven't even learned about yourself. You haven't healed the pieces that were broken, and you go straight into another relationship. You're going to be back here. You're going to be back in the feeling of what's wrong with this relationship. And the answer is you.
And in one way, it's really about just growing up.
Yeah.
Sounds to
but
me
it's not. But it's taking ownership. It's understanding the ownership, understanding, how you created it to get to this place as well, right? Mm-hmm. And so, and the sad part about it is, I always say to my clients when they come to see me, I say, is there a way back? And a lot of the times it's like no, because there's already somebody else there, right?
Right.
And that's to me, that's the worst piece for me.
Yeah, it's too late.
doing what I do is it's too late. It's too late when there's somebody else in the picture. And that's really sad.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the homework this week is I really want people to start being accountable for yourself. So if you're going to be accountable, start to look at what are the positions that you do. Are you a villain, or like a villain and is a projector, a victim, a withdrawer, or a rescuer, which is a withholder? So this is a homework for this week. And I'm, put some questions up there and I'll answer them. Do we have any questions, Rebecca, anywhere? No. There's only two.
No questions today, but in the replay, we'll see if, as people might watch this at another time, and they might, Diane will come back and answer the questions if you want to put them in the comments below.
Totally. All right. Thank you.
So see you next week. And what are we going to cover on next week?
So next week, I just want people to do their homework and see what positions do they play: the victim, the villain, the hero.
Positions. Okay.
Yeah, the positions. And then I will explain a little bit more about how our blueprint is developed. So stay tuned until next week. All right?
Okay. Tuning off. Have a great week.
You too. Thank you.
Start loving yourself.
Exactly.